and services. Let's see closer about ideas SciPop. Our visions to be the accomplished publishers and facilitating the knowledge exchange and as well as providing real contributions for the scientific development in the world. As the reflections of those visions, our mission is to provide the platforms of publishing to share knowledge and as well as the result of scientific that will have impact on knowledge as the form of a commitment of our visions and missions. ID SciPop has been successful developing several journal in many study fields. Among other is that Data, Journal of Information System and Management, SUMNA, Journal of Accounting and Tax, Legalis, Journal of Law Review, Eduscape, Journal of Education Insight, Medicore, Journal of Health Informatics and Health Policy. In the era of globalizations and information, Indonesia's scientific publications stand on as the crucial important institutions. We're not just a publisher, we are as a catalysator the advancements of research and spreading knowledge in many fields. The editorials, scientific editorials, it is the key to make sure that the quality of the scientific articles that will be published. Indonesia Scientific Publications, it is a platform in publishing these scientific articles in many fields. Our intention is that to have a national reputations, institutions, and then supporting a higher ethic and manner. We are in ID Pub. We are inviting researcher, academics, and scientists from many fields to join with us in order to advance the scientific world. We do believe that your scientific work have a huge potentials to provide a meaningful contributions to the development of knowledge through uh, our variety journal and the editorial process, we have a commitment to support and publicize a good quality of research result in the world. Let's join us with the ID SciPart and provide your contributions for the advancements of scientific. Good morning, the Honorable, the main directors of ID SciPub, Mrs. Dr. Novianita Rulandari, MSIC CAR CTT. Speaker, Mr. Andri Dayarana Silalahi, PhD, and our respected guests. A very good morning from Indonesia and greeting of benevolence to us all. The online training strategy of writing scientific articles with experts today, Saturday, January 13, 2024. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank God. Let us pray to the presence of God Almighty because due to His blessing, we can all be here to attend the online training of strategies for writing scientific articles with expert. And myself, Putri Ayu Lestari, acted as your MC today. Online training strategy for writing scientific articles with expert by Indonesian scientific publications, ID SciPub, is a form of training activities with a pragmatism paradigm approach. You will be guided step by step, start from the basic concept to submitting articles. This training is designed to be applicable, easy to practice, and effective in helping you to publish articles in scientific journals. All right, before we start, let me convey the agenda of our event and as well as the house rule for today. The schedule, the opening speech by the main directors of ID SciPop, opening by moderator, the material delivery sessions, Q&A sessions, certificate presentations, and closing. All right? For the house rule that must be followed by all the guests is that all of the attendees are expected to be on cam and use the virtual backdrop that we have sent you. The audience needs to be in the mute, microphone needs to be on mute. If you want to listen to the program in English, please click the interpretations button in the right corner of the Zoom screen. All right. Next, it is time for us to listen the remarks from the main directors of ID SciPop, Mrs. Doctors Novianita Rulandari MSI Sikar CTT. The time is yours. Very good morning and welcome to all of distinguished participants. Me, as the main directors of Indonesia Scientific Publications, I am proud to open the online training event 120 minutes of scientific article writing strategy based on data. Those people who are registered, almost 600 participants registering for these activities from last night from various countries and various universities, like the Keith Royal Institute, Netherlands, Kansas State University, Manhattan, University of Putra, Malaysia, Sunburn University, Vietnam, and many other universities from India, Pakistan, Nigeria, Maldives, and many others. It is showing that a huge commitment to pursue the scientific knowledge. Today, we're lucky to have Mr. Andri Dayaranake Silalahi, PhD from Chaoyang University of Technology, Taiwan, as the main resource persons for us today's. He has an extensive experience as a writer and has been publishing more than 20 articles on Scopus. Mr. Andri will provide a comprehensive guidance in writing scientific articles by using a pragmatism paradigm approach. Apart from that, I would like to use this opportunity to introduce the journal published by ID SciPop. We're currently managing more than 40 journal index internationally and Sinta, covering various fields of study such as IT, communications, management, finance, educations, law, health, and many other. Chemistry and many other. This is a perfect opportunity for all of us to be able to explore and perhaps contribute to our future scientific publications. Today's event is part of our ID SciPop commitment. It's also part of our corporate social responsibility because we are supporting the progress of science and research and to ensure that this knowledge can be accessed by various groups throughout the world. And this is the real form of our commitment. Again, thank you for your willingness to attend this event. Let's take the advantage of this time together to share and grow. Hopefully, this event will provide inspirations and new insight that is useful for all of us. Thank you. Thank you very much for the warm welcome, Madam Directors. And now I'm happy to hand over the rest of the event to our moderator who will guide us through the remaining of the event. Dr. Andes Juardi, MMMSI. He is a master graduate in Sharia Financial Economic from University of Indonesia and is currently pursuing a doctorate in business administrations at Pajajaran University. His experience as a civil servant and his role in the large companies such as Lipo Group and Artagraha Group have shaped him into an insightful and professional figure. Not only that, Dr. Andes Juardi, MMMSI, also known as a skilled consultant and active writer, with many of his articles published in national and international journals. His presence today will definitely add value and depth to our discussions. Let's give round of applause. Let's welcome Dr. Andes Juardi, MMMSI. All right, thank you very much, Miss Putri Ayulestari, who have been giving me an opportunity as the moderator for today. The Honorable, the directors of Indonesia Adisaipa scientific publication, the Honorable to our speaker, Mr. Andri Dayarana, K. Silalahi, PhD, and the one that we're proud of all of the attendee that is very amazing, who has been joining not only from Indonesia, but as well as from many other countries. We also have heard from what Miss Novianita Rolandari has said to us, the registered participant in our Zoom coming from many, many countries apart from Indonesia, among other from Vietnam, the University Swinburne, from Eligard University, Muslim University of India, and UPM from Malaysia, from Nigeria, Netherlands, and many other countries that has been registered to our webinar today. All right, without further ado, my name is Juarti. I'll acted as the moderator with our webinar under the theme of strategy for writing these scientific articles with expert. And let's welcome our amazing speaker, Mr. Andri Dayarana K. Silalahi, PhD. But before that, like what has been mentioned earlier by the MC, he is a, an international journal writer with Scopus Index. More than 20 articles has been written by him. Without further ado, Mr. Andri Dayarana K. Silalahi, PhD, time is yours. Thank you very much for the moderator, Mr. Dr. Andes Juardi. But yeah, I've met you before, but I feel like I want to see you again. And again, I would like to say thank you to Madam Doctors Novianita and the team from Indonesian Scientific Publications that has been inviting me and providing me with opportunity to share knowledge and to share a very valuable experience because during my time on PhD, this is something that I experienced when I met my senior. I sometimes confuse where the us. So feels like these forums, of course, will provide a wider overview about since many time I've been engaging with professor, maybe when my time doing the PhD, I feel like I'm lost because I don't know where's the directions. But then, due to that feelings, that is why I'm able to write independent articles and then collaborate with many professor from USA, England, and many other countries. Again, thank you very much for that experience. And now let's start our discussions about how to write a scientific articles and then how to publish these articles in the higher index such as Scopus or WS. Okay, so it is an honor for me, Ibu Dr. Novianita and team. So allow me to share my screen, Mr. Moderator. Have you been able to see my screen? So, the topic that we're going to discuss today is about how to adopt pragmatic paradigms to foster substantial, to write scientific article to create something that we call to a contributions. So actually, I do believe that some of you here has become an editor from IDC Pub, or probably some of you are reviewer or even an author. But then, three of this aspect or three of this scope, one of the very important that we need to highlight in writing the article. Let's say that editors, editing, reviewer, evaluate, and author writing. Actually, three of these roles have the same concept, something that we call contributions. A contributions toward theory and contributions toward society. So, only this, ladies and gentlemen, only this that we're talking about, be it a small article or a huge article or Scopus Index article or none, all of them talking about these contributions actually. So, to provide the materials and as well as tip and tricks how to achieve the contributions that is a very significant toward theory and practice in many sectors, be it business, IT, so on and so forth. So that's what we're going to talk about today. All right. I'm going to start with abstract. Like what I mentioned earlier, there are many paradigm, but then in this opportunity, we're going to talk about the paradigm that we call the pragmatic paradigm. Pragmatism actually focusing on something that we called only referred to the problem solving. So we're talking about what's the real issues. Let's say there's the questions when the time I become a reviewer. Let's say international journal index in Q1, for example. There's a manuscript that has been submitted and sent to me as a reviewer, for example. In the introductions, I don't see there is any problem. And there's no research questions or the problem statements on it. So quickly, I respond to the email and I mentioned to the editor that this research do not have any contributions because why? What's the reasons? Number one, there's no research questions, do not identify the problem clearly, and do not provide a problem assess statement assertively. And in 2 days, I'm going to send it back because there's none, no problems. What does it mean? If there's no problem, of course, there's no solutions. There is no theoretical or practical solutions. So that's what I'm about to say. And the next one is the overview. The overview that we're going to talk today start from the paradigm, the why, the literature, and identifying the problems until evaluate the practical solutions. So this is what we're going to talk about today. And then we'll provide you a practical step by step on how to do this. The first one, let's start with the paradigm. I am starting from three paradigms that we need to have a different way of thinking because paradigm, it is a foundations framework for a researcher to see a problem. If we think positivism, we will focus on the empirical evidence and then objective reality and the ability to generalize finding. For example, oh, it turns out that today's Indonesia economy facing a decrease because due to the foreign debt and inflation and so on and so forth. So by data, we can also generalize that. But then, for a fact, Only because of that, there are also micro factors. Let's say the consumer behavior in the live streaming activities, for example. Oh, the viewer of live streaming is increasing due to the interactivity or engagements provided by the streamers, right? So this is a fact that we can reveal. But then the positivism way of thinking will focus on something that already existed and developed. What about if it's not established yet? But then the fact is there. Lately, I've developed a research with many professors in Taiwan. We develop an idea to integrate and a traditional dance to use it as the communications for sustainability. And meanwhile, my background is that management. My background is marketing. My background is customer behavior and psychology. So most of my friends ask me why you're talking about traditional dance to communicate sustainability. Why? Because in theory, ladies and gentlemen, in theory, it's non-existent to connect about how the activities of dance can be used as a communications means or tools to influence other people, to show a sustainable behavior, to conserve the water. But then it not close the possibility to use dance as a non-verbal tools. Let's say that people are dancing and I feel touched. Why not use the affectant influence to provide an influence to environmental consciousness? So we developed that paper from the pragmatism paradigm, and it's done. Right now, it is under review from the cleaner reductions. It is the Q1. So this is a very good performance, right? The way of our we need to start the way of thinking is that the problem solving because there's no one identified two of this thing in Google Scholar. It's non-existent, but then we can use this. Of course, the nonverbal communications can be means to talk about the sustainability. So that's the problem in trick. Meanwhile, if you use positivism, oh, by theory, yes, the traditional dance can be used by the nonverbal communications, but there's no proof. Again, no empirical evidence that proved the dance have an influence towards sustainability. So we use something that we call pragmatisms, ladies and gentlemen, but not someone who have a pragmatic natures or way of thinking, but just an approach. And then next, let's go with the why. Why we use the pragmatic paradigm in a research. It's always something that we highlight on giving the reasons why we use this pragmatism's paradigm because it will come out with one solutions, of course, with practical solutions. Of course, the practical solutions will be solved by the practical solutions. For example, if we speak about positivism paradigms, like what I mentioned earlier, empirical evidence, it has been proved by theory, it's already there. And after that, we develop that theory, and then we make a new hypothesis, and then we do observations, we collect data, and then we take the big data to test the hypothesis, and then we check the hypothesis in the SEP or JAC. For a fact, ladies and gentlemen, the research is not only about this. So this is like an eggs and chicken. Which one come first? We don't know. That, for example. So it's like egg and chicken. Whether we start with the theory first or whether we start with the practice first. Let's say one time in the last 2023 on July, I was questioned by a professor and they asked me, Mr. Andre, please develop about how you can connect this traditional dance with something about the communications regarding sustainability. And he refused that idea because the only thing or the top of the mind is the empirical evidence is nowhere to be found. And then I said the rationality will create the prepositions and it will create hypothesis and then it will become the observations and then after that it will make a solutions and then we had a deals and then he also one of the authorship of my research. So it's something like that. So if you can pay attention to my slide, ladies and gentlemen, we always do this research from step by step, starting with identifying the problem. Is there any problems or not? So that's why in the aspect on the left, insight or recognitions for identifying the practical problems to be able to identify the problems, right? So the paradigm, pragmatism start with the problems. What's the problem? Meanwhile, for positivism, for example, oh, let's look at the theory. Is there any theory occupying our research? Is there any theory that can be utilized to align what are we going to research? The question is that what if the theory is non-existent? That's a very serious question, don't you think? Let's say that right now, ladies and gentlemen, you are doing your doctoral degree, and then a professor challenge us. Oh, you need to do this based on the topic of interest that we already assigned for you. But theoretically, let's say Mr. Juardi and other who are now doing a doctors, they actually have an interest that has never been dig before by the expert, but then we are being trapped by the wording. Let's say that the professors say that, oh, there's no theory of this. How can you prove this? Right? The factual thing is that it happens. Of course, we need to identify. And then we need to be creative to prove that this exists even though that the research might be wrong or the theory might be wrong if it also challenged with other theory, right? So let's say once we success to develop new theory from the pragmatic paradigm that we have developed from your dissertations, for example, of course they shouldn't say anything. Let's say that the research of Mr. Juardi and Mr. Andre has been challenged with this theory, and that would be fine. That's okay because it's something that we called a good development of knowledge, ladies and gentlemen. So, of course, we need to start from the insight or recognitions from the practical problem. You have to remember that practical problems. Currently, I collaborate in the year of 2023, and then we publish in the Q1 under titles of human behavior and emerging technologies. I collaborate with one of the professor from Ibu Novianti's environment from the public policy field. And then after that, I am from psychology and consumer behavior. After that, we are looking for a room for collaborations and then we share stories. Oh, turns out that the social media is utilized to communicate the public policy. But is it effective? How the social media designed can be effective and how the public communications. So we need to compare. the one that is effective and the one that is not. So it's already cross-disciplined, right? I'm from management, he is from public policies, and then we look for the problems, insight or recognitions of practical problems. Right now, the political buzzer probably saying something that is wrong. So engagement in the social media, it's not something as expected by the general public. So there's a negative. There's also a positive side. So we compare that.
So I won't take it for a bit long because the training will be quite long. As I said before, again, the pragmatical paradigm must have a solutions. Let's say if you always focus on theory, maybe the theoretical solution that you will come up sometimes, let's say initially it's 100% and it's only contributed to the theory only 80%. But in general, but I don't know how the Indonesians site is published. Let's say you receive a manuscript and we should check the concentrations or the percentage of contributions. Me, as a reviewer, I will see that how much the practical contributions, the minimum standard is 70% and 20% theory. What does this mean? And today we are not aligned with the practical conditions. Sometimes we are as a scholar, sometimes we are into research, into theory, while our research is not that practical. So the concentrations, the percentage is less. So that's what I read from the today's article. So it is proven that the, let's say, the percentage, the implications is only like 5 paragraphs. So it's funny, right? So at least it should be balanced so that the contributions or the use of the research for the theory can be more significant. And the next is flexibility. We have to communicate between dance and management and the sustainability. I have proven that this is flexible. And the next is inclusiveness. This is certain from the methodological aspect and also theoretical aspect from the theory. We try to connect micro expressions, the SOR theory from consumer behavior, and also ADA theory from marketing. So we combine these 3 theories in one research so that the inclusiveness of the theories and also the field and also the background can fit together. And there is also adaptability to the context. This is also something for sure that we have to consider because we have to bring broader perspective. So we will not be strict to one perspective. And another one is interdisciplinary collaborations. So in this research, I have many teams. First is dance professionals who doesn't have a academic background, but they can read micro expressive and can also convey a message through a movement that's done by the dancer. So that's what we are using. And the next is a psychological. I'm from marketing, and another one is from environment. So there are 4 authors with different backgrounds. So in Taiwan, one of the government project that have a very high score and with a big amount of funding is the one that cross disciplinary or interdisciplinary, and the next is emphasized on outcome. And I'm sure that with that paradigm, when we use this pragmatical paradigm, we can create a bridge between practical problem and also theoretical solutions, right? So we can bridge those two. And sometimes, as I said before, the failure of the research in general is that they cannot bridge the theoretical discourse into a practice or into a public policy. Let's say how the development of dance community and the development of e-commerce from marketing field. Sometimes it fails, but theoretically it succeeds. So from the pragmatical perspective, we have to focus on pragmatical or practical solutions that we want to achieve. Now let's focus and let's say if you have a if you want to have questions, you can write your comments in the live chat, and at the end of the if you want to ask a question at the end of the session, this is also fine. So in this diagram, we will discuss about this diagram. We will start from insight or recognitions, or how we recognize or how we can identify practical problem, and how we do the literature review, how we propose research questions, methodology, and also until finding the solutions to practical problems. So I have a secret that I want to share with you, but it's not a secret. I have developed the research from the diagram that has been developed. So I have developed and also criticized this diagram because I think the diagram, the applicability is fine, it's okay, but it's not practical for those, let's say, the beginner researcher. So from other perspective, the from pragmatical perspective is not that deep. So Paswari, I want to criticize this. I have criticized this. I have written the paper. So I add another aspect here, and I also add another aspect at the top. But what I want to add here is repetitive behavior, and also the last one is evaluate the solutions. So here there is a repetitive behavior. So it is done in a repetitive manner, and while the rest are still the same. Sometimes what we identify in practice is not connected with the theory, and also the other way around. That is why what I'm doing here is I add repetitive actions, and at the bottom I'm adding evaluate the solutions to practical solutions, because at the end of the steps, that is finding for solutions. Now the question is whether the solution that has been developed is practical. So that's the questions, right? And whether it is best solutions, it is the right solutions. This is how the normal research is conducted. We develop the hypothesis, we develop the methodology, we write introductions, and then we interpret the result, we test the hypothesis, and we provide a solution, and then we conclude. So that's a normal way of research. But by correcting this diagram, I add another steps here, and the steps is called as evaluate solutions by providing the questionnaires to the research. So questionnaire is usually conducted before the research. Let's say there is a pre-survey. So let's say when we have developed the operationalizations, we create this questionnaires, and then we test the hypothesis. But for me, I tried in different way. Again, I try to spread, I distribute the questionnaire to evaluate the solution. So we try to criticize in another level. And the first step that we have to do is identifying the problem and how we identify the problem. Maybe because the base that I use in developing my PowerPoint is the research from marketing, survey behavior, public policy, but this can also be used in other fields like IT, chemistry, and like my colleague also use this framework, and also in pharmacy. But the steps that we are following is more or less is the same. So if you are coming from other background, let's say IT or other field, you can just follow the steps. The first step that we have to do is try to develop pre-survey to gain more in-depth data. The pre-survey, it's usually used before the research, but usually we have the topic of interest that we try to research. So the topic of interest that we are developing in the pre-research with the sense of, what do we call it? The sense of our awareness to the problem. Oh, turns out that I want to research on the like ChatGPT, how ChatGPT different differs for research, whether it's undergraduate students, master's students, PhD students, postdoctoral, assistant professor, associate professor, and professors. So in one of my research that will be published in March about GPT, I developed four aspects, what I called as the combinations between knowledge and skill. So let's say with the undergrad students level, graduate students, masters, postgrad, postdoc, assistant professor. So when we combine the knowledge and skill and how the outcome is, let's say the productivity, the performance. So that's the two things I have checked. That's why the title of the research is the knowledgeable and the unskilled, whether they become more knowledgeable or the knowledge become more degraded. So that's the topic of the research that I have done. So the steps that I conducted based on this diagram is first, I conducted a pre-survey. I did a pre-survey to the undergrad students, masters, PhD, postdoctoral, and professors. And I conducted the survey about the use of this ChatGPT. The questions that I raised in the questionnaire, like for those who joined in this survey is first, what's the purpose of you using ChatGPT? How is your academic performance after using ChatGPT? How your academic performance when you use ChatGPT? So there are three questions. So I asked from the level of undergrad to grad and to professor level. The answers are various. The undergrad students said that it will help us in completing our assignments. And professors said that there are many mis and wrong informations shared by the ChatGPT. So here there is a pros and cons. So the pre-survey that I conducted is to identify the problem. And from the survey that I shared in this example, we can identify in one context of the research, the respondents shares a different answers. Is that an intrigue of the problem? That's a problem, isn't it? That is why in this first step, I mentioned that do a pre-survey of what you want to research. So make sure that the pre-survey can bridge business interests from various perspectives. And the question, Pak Andrea, let's say, my research base is finance, but I have nothing that I can survey. Oh no, you're wrong. You have a lot of things to survey. What types of finance that you want to research on? Let's say banking, finance, or let's say you're from health. You want to research on nursing, and it said this is difficult. There's a confidentiality informations, but you can share about informed consent. You can do a survey what's wrong with the hospital. You can just set it in a broad way and you can provide the list that they have shared. And then you should identify the keywords that they share. And so the second steps is write down a series of pre-survey methods to gain insight into research topics. So this is how, is there any way to do a pre-survey that is also sort of like observation with a pre-survey, that is an interview, and if you do the interview, it should be with less respondents, or you can also do interview with the experts, like the paper that I developed with my colleagues. So we identify we are going to interview, who will be uh, who will be engaged in the survey. And then we also consider about the sustainability background, and that is also professors from non-verbal communications. So we conducted surveys from these three respondents. So we interview this respondent, and we should not ignore the result of the interview, because this interview will be used in introductions. The result of this interview will be used in introductions. And I hope that once we've shared these materials, so those who are interested in the publishing their journal, you must have this pre-survey result, because from the pre-survey result, it indicates a serious problem. So that's a serious problem that we have to figure out. And what are the steps in this PowerPoint, for example? And me, before conducting the pre-survey, I try to find out data. So the data that I gained, for example, from impulse buying and also from the consumer behavior marketing, it indicates that the top online impulses purchases by gender. So from their surveys result, it is said that it means that the data that I gain from the statistics shows that there is a different perspective on gender when there is an impulse purchases. So it is proven from my research, when the product is an electronic product, the men tend to buy it in impulse manner. But when it comes to beauty products or clothing products, and especially if there is a discount, and female tends to do impulses purchase compared to male. So it means that there is a significant gender aspect. And from this statistics data, the type of product also uh, create the inductions individual to purchase the product. And there is also from the aspect of the platform, online shopping and offline store. So I have identified several aspects and from the statistics, so I can develop the pre-survey. And then I developed the pre-survey in a form of questionnaire. And in the questionnaire, this is this example, general example. But if we want to do deeper context, we can create a more specific or advanced forum. So let's say in this example, I conducted a pre-survey online and offline. And what I incorporate in the survey is the first, the gender, the platform made an impulse purchase, the items purchased, and the reasons for making impulse purchase, and what and feelings after you do the impulse buying, and who, or is there any other people or colleague friends who drive or push you to buy the impulse purchase. And sometimes this friend try to encourage us to buy something. Let's say if you have a friend, why you don't purchase everything anything when you get a new first salary? And is there any time pressure to buy impulse? And then after that, you can develop, let's say, if you are from environmental or sustainability background or psychology background, please develop your pre-survey. Once you did a pre-survey, so this is from one respondent. And usually what I did is once I completed the pre-survey, I usually collect 10 to 50 respondents. Let's say I'm from a strategic management. It's hard to gather the 10 managers. So it depends on the type of the study and your background. But as a manager, let's say 3 to 4 or to 5 managers, and if we can combine and can gather those 5 managers to do our survey, we can get the index data. But from this example, we can observe that from this example, let's say the gender is male, the purchases through e-commerce, the product he bought is apparel products. Reason why he bought um, it is a timely discount because the short time for the discount, and he got the information from relatives, colleagues, and friends. And the feelings after impulse buying is he feels regret, happy, share the unusual purchase product, and also whether his friends affects his in doing the impulse buying. Yes, strongly influenced. And there is also answer stated the more less time I have to purchase, the more self-driven to purchase, which means that when the time is very short, and he'll try to do the impulse purchase. And when we ask why did he do that? Because shopping is his hobby. So this is the answer response from one respondent. What if we have a, let's say, 10 respondents, 20 to 50? So the answers are very diverse, and this diverse answer will be accumulated compilations, and we will try to take the keywords in terms of paradigm, the insight for insight or recognitions is to state the practical problem. So the practical problem, we hear this from the voice of the customer. And if you are from the strategic background, and we should listen to, let's say from the manager. And if you are from a health aspect, we should listen to the doctors, nurses, and other fields. So we should listen from them. Why? Because we have to listen what the exact problem, what's the practical problems that they are experiencing. And the second is identifying theoretical gaps. But we should not forget that what we have to do here is to identify the problem. Yes, okay. But the goal is to identify keywords. To identify keywords, what keywords that we are using in our research. These keywords will be transferred to here. We transfer it to find out the theoretical gap, That is why, in this case, the second steps that we have to do is So what you get from this insight recognitions from the practical problem is a keyword and also the problem that will be developed in introductions. And from the keywords, you can just copy paste or you can search the keywords in Google Scholar. So just an example, it's not only in Google Scholar, you can also search in other database, WOS, and Scopus, Google Scholar, and other, let's say, Dimension ResearchGate. But in this case, I recommend that you have to find out the literature from Google Scholar. And then the purpose is to gain knowledge about literature, whether the literature has been occupied or has been discussed, that has been discussed in relation to the result of my pre-survey. If it has been confirmed that it has done, we have to think about how we should do the advancement. Or if it has not done before, how we can create an invention because practically it happens and how we should sort it out the problem. So we have to focus on the practical problem. That is why you can search the keywords on Scopus or other databases. But in this case, I strongly recommend, first of all, you have to check the keywords in Google Scholar because it's more diverse. So let's say the keywords in this research, in the pre-survey that have developed, there are several keywords. The keywords are, for example, impulse buying, mail, because it is uh, it is to identify the behavior, the platform, and regret is emotions. The emotions post buying. And one keyword that is very critical, that is very essential that you have to remember, do not copy paste the title of your research in the Google Scholar because the result will not be listen, do not copy paste the keywords without quotations. So you have to use quotations so that you can get an exact phrase in the manuscript. So in this case, if you notice that I put quote, I put a quotation marks, yeah? Impulse buying, mail e-commerce, and record. And the quotation mark is to gain a very accurate result, a very accurate results from the keywords that we have that we have found and the one that we want to publish. And then you should also notice that here there are 437 research that have been conducted related to the impulse buying. But the question is there any in one research that discussed about these four aspects practically? And let's say someone is experiencing this and this has been researched in previous studies. So that's the thing that we want to investigate. In this case, I also searched several articles and I selected the articles and I suggest when you find a theoretical gap, please use the articles the one that cited most. And from these findings, use the articles that cited a lot by the writers, or use the articles, the newest, the recent article, and then you try to compare how the keywords are used. So this is just, for example. And then I read the first article, factors affecting Chinese consumer impulse buying decision in live e-commerce. And here, turns out I found that this article talks about impulse buying in live streaming of e-commerce. And then check the second articles, understanding consumer in blah blah blah. And this article talks about the theory, stimulus, organism, and response to connect the impulse buying in live streaming. And there's also another journals talking about understanding. Yeah, this is my research, and another articles, and I found that the post purchase and post buying on beauty product is different from other product. And the third articles is and other blah blah blah. And turns out that the keywords when someone is conducted of impulse purchase or panic buying during COVID-19, it will end up with regret because of monetary losses and also pushed with the fear emotions. So they feel afraid.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Please imagine that I read 10 to 20 articles, and turns out that, ladies and gentlemen, from these four articles, there's no one articles that comprehensively discuss about the topic that I've provided earlier. Impulse buying, and then regret, emotions, sorry, mail, and then e-commerce, and so on and so forth, talking about a manuscript, comprehensive manuscript. What does it mean, ladies and gentlemen? This is something that we call theoretical gap. This is what we call a theoretical gap, ladies and gentlemen. This is just in brief because due to the time constraint that we need to comply. But then, if we want to speak more deeper about this, so we can dig more on this as well. Even the gap that hasn't been analyzed or studied before can also be identified. The facts, dense that I develop, even one research hasn't been done about it, nor single research has done to my topic yet. But then in practical problem, it is exists. But we need to solve it though. But how? But then, because the previous period does not occupy at all, so how? If some of my friends ask me questions, let's say that they just start their study and then they went to Taiwan and then they met me and they said to me that it's very difficult for me to find gap, but for me it's the other way around. So how is it, Mas Andre? It's very hard for me to find the gap. Oh, Mr. Suarti. So that's why we can create collaborations, right? So that's the fact, ladies and gentlemen. I- It's just an expressions actually about doing research is not as difficult as you thought, but executing research will be difficult because if you're not consistent enough, it will fail over and over again. So feels like to find the gap, it's quite easier. And it's easier for us to do the research and we can just do the in-depth reading. After that, I take the article that I want to read, and then this is the research framework or the conceptual framework. The conceptual framework that has been developed from the first research, second research, and third research. The most easiest questions, Mr. Juardi, Ms. Nofi, where in the conceptual framework there is a regret? There is none. So what's not existed in this conceptual framework? Where the inclusivity of genders in this? There's none. And it's just in the impulsive behavior. Meanwhile, impulsive buying. So this is the impulsive buying. And then what about post-purchase behavior? This is what I refer to regret or the mental disengagement and so on and so forth. But then it hasn't been viewed. And this is the first research. The second research, this is the conceptual framework, but it's not talking about, again, the gender difference. But then there is regrets. Again, we need to ask the questions. If we are impulsive buying, is it only negative effect that's come out of it? So I've experienced this. Let's say that I was traveling to Vietnam at that time, so I like the souvenir and I just bought it because I like it, but I'm not using it actually. And I'm not regretting it. But then I share the souvenir to other people, let's say, meaning that post purchase is not only creating regret, but also happy and other thing. It means that it's gap, right? And then from both of this research, for example, or the public, this is just an example, ladies and gentlemen. In short, we can do it like this, but then comprehensively, please do it privately. The more the more you collect manuscript, but then the gap will be clearer. Miss Nofianti at that time or last year asked me questions. How many articles that can be produced within a year? This year, Miss Nofi, me, and Tim publicize our target is 50. And it needs to be in Q1 and Q2. How? So, the way to do this, ladies and gentlemen, I encourage all of you to establish a table. And this one is author. And then from this side is finding. And here is limitations. And the other one, gap identified. And then framework. The framework that looks like this picture, ladies and gentlemen. So let's collect the first author. These are the gap, these are the findings, and the one that you read in the gap is this, and this is the conceptual framework. Imagine, ladies and gentlemen, if you have 50 lists. Don't you think from this list you can develop 10 research? Why? Because you already successfully identified the gap. Those gap that we're going to fill. We fill it out with the solutions. Right. So it's like that. If Ibunofi asks me what's the secret, these are the secret. At the beginning of the year, I always have a table that looks like this. I have 5 tables covering 5 topics, one, two, three, 5 topics. And then these 5 topics will consist of 100 lists. So this 100 lists, we already understand what are the gaps. From this gap, we will create, from this gap, we're going to publish this in this journal or this in that journal, like what I demonstrate you in this picture. So whether the research is difficult? No, if we can understand the step comprehensively. But then I want to encourage you, ladies and gentlemen, for the parameters. Based on the research gap were also found based on this, we can see, turns out that the first article focusing on the broadcaster, how the reviewer's emotions, whether they're happy or not. But then From this second research, we can also see what's next and research questions. Like what I mentioned to you, without research questions, without problems, that's correct, right? Without problems, without solutions. That's why you always end up at reject. That's very true, ladies and gentlemen. So if you look at this without the research questions, meaning that me as a reviewer, I'm going to ask you, what's the problem on your research? What's the problem that you want to investigate and you want to provide a solution? So without research questions, without research questions, your research will be without problems. It means if there's no solutions, we need to reject immediately. If you want to have impact factor, there's an instant reject, right? Because simply that's the way how they identify. If they don't have any problems, then why bother doing the research? And the next one is about how we can identify or formulate the research questions. This is the critical aspect of pragmatic paradigm. The first step is that we need to formulate the research questions. It is very different with the formulations of the problem, something that you want to be answered in your investigations based on pre-survey and the gap that you found. It's very easy. Will gender differences result in different impulse behavior? This is from something that we already revealed earlier. In practical, there's a gap, right? The problem is very different. And then are men versus women who, when the discount time is limited, is compelled to buy on impulse. Meaning that whether men or women, when the short discount time is limited, they compelled to buy something impulsively. Because that's also a problem, right? And the next one, what types of products do men buy most often versus women on impulse? And then research questions number 4, what is post purchase behavior of men versus women that tend to feel sorry or regret or not? Oh, probably they are the one who have a high income do not feel sorry. So that's the research questions that you need to convey. The next one, from the research questions that you have been mentioned, and then I'll just combine two of this research. I combine these two framework, and then after that, there's a new framework, Mr. Duarte. There's a new framework from the table that I already established. This is the first gap. We focus on the regret on the post-purchase, impulse buying, and then regret, and if they're happy, this is the second research gap. I change that to pleasure, for example. So that's why it's very easy to find the gap. So the previous research questions that I've mentioned earlier, and I place that like this. The second research questions are men versus the women who this is regarding the time pressure. Is there any difference or not? What does the behavior of men and women? This is the framework that I want to establish. And then after that, is there any gender difference? And I'm going to differ these about how they have a spontaneous buying behavior. And the next one, whether the emotions of men and women with their tendency in post purchase, whether they have a tendency to regret or not. That's why I put regret and others. So something that looks like this. This is in the context of e-commerce live streaming. So now you already form a conceptual framework, right? Usually, anywhere we go, of course, the research start with the introductions, literature review, methodology, and then result in discussions. After that, implications and conclusions. That's correct, right, ladies and gentlemen? But for me, Mr. Juardi, I reverse this. The methods that I do is reverse method. I start with finding the solutions first. I try to find the solutions first, and then I develop the framework or theoretical frameworks, like the one in this picture, and then I arrange the methodology. After that, I gather the data through questionnaire, and then I analyze the data from research and discussions. After that, I write down the introductions. So introductions comes last for me, Mr. Duarte. There's never introductions be written on the beginning, always at the end. That's for me because introductions, it's a compilations for everything that we've done, whether it has been achieved or not, whether it's significant or not, whether the contributions can be measured or not, and whether the background has been good or not. So this is the step that we're doing. Finding solutions. That's the first step. And the next one, the conceptual framework, and then developing the methodology and questionnaire. After that, we do the data analysis. And number five, you can write the introductions. And number six, of course, the step is to submit to Indonesia scientific publications, right? That's the last step, right, ladies and gentlemen? Or maybe we can all pray together that all the journals that were under your guidance or the managements from ID SciPop can be Scopus indexes so that we can always be motivated to develop the scientific journal. Like the citation rate, of course, the citation rate will be high because why? Because we're talking about the practical problems. And like what I said, you need to develop the research development in the paradigm pragmatism. So you need to remember, ladies and gentlemen, the research methodology and literature review, it's just considered as medium or the tools to achieve a target. Where you found a difficult research methodology, there's none, right? As well as literature review. It's all something that we call epistemologia. Episteme. Episteme is about how to acquire knowledge or to achieve knowledge, right? That's why it is the study of knowledge. We develop the knowledge by also using the knowledge to solve a problem. So always in pragmatisms and literature review, it's not quite significant. But what most significant is that what's the problem and how to solve this. How to solve this with the literature review, a methodology, and what's the practical solutions. In this research, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very sorry. There's a little bit of typo here. The theory, it's actually not bottom-up spillover, ladies and gentlemen. The theory that I use, stimuli, organism respond. Pandri, how do you know the theory? Yes, of course, because The theory, it's um, exists from the previous one. Let's say that the impulse buying or stimulus response, the theory, it's very clear. That's why I told you that the theory and the methodology, it's only a tool to achieve the target, which is the problem solving. And now let's continue just a little bit more, ladies and gentlemen. We're done in the research questions. And we're going to develop, oh, in my research for the impulse buying or the conceptual framework that I've developed, what is the appropriate theory to investigate this? Don't ever do research if, let's say, that you are from the social science field or humanities. Do not do research without theory. Or Mr. Andre, you don't have any theory yet. You can develop the theory or the propositions that will refer to the theory so that it can be validated about our finding, ladies and gentlemen. And what's the suitable theory? Is it only existed from the previous theory? If not, then you can develop the propositions and develop a conceptual framework. Oh, it's already done, like I've mentioned earlier. And then after that, how the hypothesis, whether we propose hypothesis, propositions, or so on and so forth, how the operationalizations and how to measure and so on and so forth, whether we're going to use the quantitative or qualitative, seems like this is something that actually can be investigated and you can make an adjustment if you want. And then about the data analysis, whether we're using social science or computer science, whether we're going to use the R or JavaScript or Python and so on and so forth, or in big data or fuzzy and in social science, whether we are using the regressions and others that finally able to occupy the conceptual framework that we already developed. So it needs to be in lines. That's just the use of methodology. And then let's have a closer look. To determine theory to use in your research, of course, we can use the previous research. Oh, it turns out that the theory that previously used in the live streaming and e-commerce, they're actually a theory that has been used, which is SOR. Okay, it means that you can tick the theory. You found the theory. So this is how to develop the theory and how to apply this in your conceptual framework. Oh, this is the stimuli. Stimulus or SOR, this is a theory that explain from the environmental psychology where a individual will provide a response if there's any stimulus from the environment and then it is processed from the individual aspect, be it from emotional or cognitive. That's just a simple theory, right? And you can dig deeper on that. This is the grand theory. In Indonesia, we mentioned this as a grand theory, right? This is the grand theory. It's check. And then after that, how's the stimuli? This is the stimuli. Oh, turns out that the people are doing the impulse buying. There's the aspect of the streamers, viewers, and others, and how it can be processed from these three aspects. Oh, there's arousal and pleasure. It's emotions, right? Not through cognitions. And then there's a response as well. And again, the SOR has been confirmed. Then it's done, right? After that, what about the measures and the operationalizations? Ladies and gentlemen, our difficulty is about the editor and reviewer. Usually, the research did not have a correct size, the operational, and so on and so forth. So we don't know about the variable. Let's say the variable of computers. It is measured in by what? They not identify this clearly in manuscripts. That's why we're confused sometimes. Let's say from the conceptual framework, and then I can use from the previous study if it still exists or if it already exists before. If the context is in line, so that's why we have inductive. If it's not in line with your objective, you can use the word of modify. It means that you can also do retest. And there's another thing that we called pilot study, right? A pilot study to test the measure, a measure that has been modified. You can develop the measure and then you can get the statistic result, whether it has been fulfilled or not. And then if everything's okay due to the result of modifications, you can develop this to the questionnaire. You need to collect the questionnaire. There's a lot of method of data collections online, offline, Google Form, or data collections from other method as well. And then this one. Please try. By the times we collect the data, this is actually a tip and tricks in the social science or the marketing research or marketing behavior. You can choose the other types and size. And I do really think that by methodology, all of you has been familiar about this, of course. And then there are many platforms, like I mentioned earlier, Google Form and others. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can explore furthermore about the method of researches and how you would like to be done. And then the next one, perform data analysis. Data analysis for the conceptual framework that I've mentioned to you earlier. With many methods, you can choose Smart PLS or by using Amos or by using IBM, SPSS. Then, yeah, you can analyze the data. After that, evaluations, how the practical solutions, whether it has been achieved or not, because this one that is very crucial, as I mentioned earlier. And if it is going to look like this, the hypothesis has been confirmed. How can we say this, ladies and gentlemen? Whether the research questions that has been proposed in the introductions has been confirmed or not, whether it can be achieved or not. So that's why, ladies and gentlemen, when we started discussions, of course, it needs to be start and looking like this. Discussions. Discussions needs to be developed one paragraph, whether it's about how the theory, whether the methodology and literatures has been developed, and so on and so forth. And then we go to this discussions A. You need to write down what the RQ1 or the statement of RQ1. And then after that, you need to explain in the RQ1 what's the problems. It's going to be like that, right, ladies and gentlemen? What's the problems? What's the challenge that you face in order to answer the first RQ or research questions, whether it can be achieved or not? If yes, then we can compare to the previous study. What are the difference? That's why it's very important for us to use this in the discussions. Because as far as I'm concerned, the discussions is not well managed. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, you can understand the discussions in a manuscript, sometimes talking about this, talking about many things. We need to make it centric. You can answer the R key because that's the most important points, right? Whether the objective of the research has been achieved or not, can we provide the solutions? Of course, all of this will go to the implications. If it is in implications, you can make the format again because the implications for theory, if implications for theories, ladies and gentlemen, you can make a table to state that the previous research is this and my research is this. And then after that, you can explain this table with many paragraphs. two or three paragraph, it's enough. And then regarding the practical implications, and this is very important, ladies and gentlemen, for the practical implications or implications for practice, of course, this is very important things. That's why we need to measure this. I've mentioned earlier, this is the finding, and then evaluate for finding. The current research that we're doing right now, okay, traditionally, we need to reveal that these contributions will have a benefit to business and so on and so forth. But then, if the research used this paradigm pragmatic, I use other method. I use the method based on the result that I've gained. This result will be shared again to other respondent, and it can be varied, whether it's manager, whether it's customer, or human resource departments, or president's level, and so on and so forth. You can do that. But then after that, the question is that when the problems happens, can you provide the solutions? And then we can test this. Then they're going to give a qualitative response. Of course, it will confirm, oh, turns out that your strategy is viable. Oh, this is resilient and other. We're going to receive the solutions and feedback from the practitioner. It is something that is very important that cannot be achieved. And then I will propose this again. So by the time, so ladies and gentlemen, you're successful on writing the manuscript, like what I mentioned earlier, please do not forget. Please submit it to the IDSC pub. Why? Because we have 40 journals, right, Ibu Nofi? If we have a significant contributions, practically, let's build this journal and then provide a significant contributions to the practitioners and theoretical development, so that the cultivations of journal and cultivations of, let's say that you want to achieve top 2% scientists in the world, it can all be achieved from the contributions of citations that we are going to build.
So that's all the material that I can share. And Pajuari, give it back to you. And hopefully the materials can be fruitful and useful for all of us here. Well, thank you so much to our experts, Bapak Andri Dayana Silalahi, PhD, who has been very amazing to present their presentations, his presentation. So after his presentation, it feels like we really want to write. It's like writing is very easy. He directed us how to write quickly by starting from the paradigm with a pragmatical paradigm by identifying the problem, like what is the problem and how the problem can be solved. And we have to do the pre-survey, and after this pre-survey we know how the topics of our research, and we can identify the problem. Once we identify the problem, we can get a keyword that we are going to use, that we're going to transfer, and maybe we can also find the theoretical gap from the keywords. And how we should do that, we should start from the Google Scholar. We should use the keywords to get the articles, and the articles that cited most by other researchers, or the recent articles. And once we have read the articles and then we found the gap, and then we provide some identifications, and at the end we can get the research questions. And how we should identify the research questions, and it should be done by reading the literature review, creating tables, and reading the summary of the articles, and we can get the research questions. And then what's next? And afterwards, we can develop the framework, the conceptual framework, and then we can provide the hypothesis, define the methodology, whether qualitative or quantitative, and how we collect the data, and how we should collect a qualitative or quantitative manner. Let's say if we want to do the quantitative, we can use questionnaires, or with qualitative, we can do interview, we can do in-depth interview and others methods. And then we analyze. We can use SPSS or Vivo and also with several samples. And then we evaluate. We evaluate whether our research questions has been answered through the discussions part, and the methods, the steps has been explained by our speakers. And then we try to compare the research question with the existing theory. With that base, we can create implications from our research. And afterwards, what kind of implications? If it is like theoretical implications, we can provide a table. We can create a table that is clearly presented how it should be done by our expert from Andri Dayarana Kesela. Let's give a round of applause to our speaker, very amazing speaker. So in these opportunities, we'll have a Q&A sessions, and please, those who are in Zoom meeting, we can give you a chance for Q&A sessions. In the first sessions, we will open for 3 questions. In the Zoom settings, there are several questions. And maybe before proceeding to the Q&A sessions, maybe we can refer to a Q&A column. And let's say I will do a research for thesis by using the grounded theory, and also I get articles related to the topics, my topics. Is there any tips how I can publish my writing to journals so my articles can be recognized? And then from Nugroho Setiobudui, Pandri, can you provide a study case how to create prepositions if the theory is not available? Thank you. And then from I just read 2 questions now. In parallel, we also listen to 3 questions. Or Panri, do you want to respond to the questions in the room chat? So yeah, my with pleasure, I will respond to questions. So please allow me to share screen. The more questions, it will be more exciting, right? Thank you, Mr. or Miss Han. The question is that I'm conducting research for my thesis by using grounded theory, and I got a very little articles related to my topics. Do you have any tips how I can publish my writing to journals and the journal can be recognized? Actually, one thing that I want to highlight in this occasion is that maybe, yes, it's fine if we use grounded theory, but I want to say to Mr. Han or Mrs. Han whether this grounded theory is very accurate or very critical to respond to practical problems related to our today's topic uh, on pragmatical paradigm. Again, I want to remind you that the journal doesn't guarantee whether your article or your writing is cited more or less. However, the quality of your writings will guarantee whether your journals is cited more or less. For example, you can search journal on computers on in human behavior. And in this journal, the impact factor is more than 9, and in the position is 71. It means that the journal is very well known. But there is one time where my friend published in this journal, but so far, since 2020, but so far, the article is only cited 5 times. It means that the journal doesn't guarantee it will be cited more or less. The most important one that I want to highlight is that whether your grounded theory has covered the practical problem comprehensively to the society. So based on your study, we have to check, we have to examine the measurement of the practicality of the problem. And the second is how far your research question can answer to the problem. As I said before, the theory is only tools, it's only a means. So our means or our tool doesn't guarantee whether our article will discuss further about practical issue. What guarantees more is the what kind of practical problem that you will solve, and the practical solution has been answered or not, and then it will be evaluated in the discussion and implications how far it can answer to the solutions problems. So we don't need to be hard on this. You just measure the problem. And then the next question is Pak Nugroho's from Nugroho Setiabudi. Maybe Pak Andi, you can give a study case on creating preposition if the theory is not available. So Pak Nugroho, you can search in Google Scholar. I have an articles related to prepositions development. These prepositions, the title of the articles is Do Social Media Good Governance or something affects the e-governance participants? And maybe you can check, we can search about these articles. And in that articles, I provided how to develop a propositions. In the articles, I use a theory called as a deliberative policy making. Deliberative policy making. Deliberative policy making actually focusing on public participations. The public participations to provide to engage in formulating or in drafting public policy. In that article, we identified how to combine the elements that these communities, it's not only offline communities, but now we also have online communities. So the netizens community must be deliberated to be participating in drafting or formulating public policy. And then what's the problem? That is why there is an aspect of good governance. And for good governance aspect, there's aspect of transparency, accountability, and also another elements. I mean, try to combine all of those elements with social media informations, reliability. And we combine this so we can test the impact on the e-governance participants, e-government participants or participations. Theoretically, when we combine all of these aspects asymmetrically or randomly, there is no, it won't be able to provide whether it is transparent with the reliability of social media informations, how the outcome is. Therefore, we use an approach. The analytical approach that we used is fuzzy. So this framework is developed in another way. So this is how we develop the conceptual framework. There is no hypothesis to test this kind of conceptual framework. So there is elements of good governance, social media, reliability, and also e-government participations. So there is such hypothesis exist. So we propose the prepositions. How we can propose the prepositions is first by providing reasoning from the logics or our sense as a writer who found these prepositions. How the what is the outcome when the interactions built? When the interactions created without outcome, we should not do it that way. And then how we design this for good reason to create a new hypothesis. So the initial prepositions and then hypothesis, and then we test the hypothesis, and then we evaluate the result. And after that, we provide the background to propose these prepositions theoretically and also practically. That is why we will achieve that how much, how much you want to achieve, how much do you want to apply this grounded theory with new prepositions. So that's all that I can share. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Andre. So is there does anyone want to ask a questions? You can just raise hands, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to have raise questions in person. Here we have Mr. Ibnu Azar. So please, Bapak or Mr. Ibnu Azar. Thank you so much. Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And also to Bapak Dr. Andri. And here I want to ask, my name is Ibnu. I'm from North Sumatra University from Medan, and my field is on accounting. And I have heard a lot that when the researcher tried to formulate a pilot test or questionnaire, so usually the question that come from the examiners, whether the pilot test or questionnaire test have the reference. So that's my first questions. Must we have a reference for pilot test, or should we just elaborate the research for the or the questions for the questionnaire for the research that we are going to conduct? And the second, if we use the secondary data, will the result of the research can be deep, or will it have a good quality? Thank you, Pak Andri and Pak Juardi. So please, Mr. Andri, you can respond to the questions. So, so far we only have a one participant raise hand. So let's just respond. Thank you, Mr. Ibnu. So, Mr. Ibnu, are you writing a thesis for today? I'm a professor and also have completed my PhD. So you have completed your dissertations, right? But we also need to develop as a professor, right? Because it doesn't, when I have completed my PhD, it doesn't mean that I don't learn. I stop learning. Yeah, you're right. You then you should not wait for longer. You have to develop yourself so you can exercise the paradigm that we are discussing today. So there are two reasons why we have to do pilot test. The first is this pilot test, essentially it has a plus and minus point when we have to use this pilot test. So that's the first questions that we have to raise before we conduct the pilot test on our research. The pilot test, essentially, the the ideal pilot test is used to test first the questionnaire has not been developed at all. So you develop your own questionnaire. So it has not been identified from previous study that the questionnaire has been used or has been developed today. It doesn't it's not available from existing study. And the second reason why we use pilot study, usually in the methodology, we usually state that this research refers to a research, but to adjust with the contextuality of the research, we try to modify the flow from, let's say, previously it's only 100 words, and we try to reduce to 50 words. So from the language expert, uh, it's not completely available. That is why we do the pilot study. So reason why we do pilot study is for modification. So only due to these reasons. And there's another reason is adopted from previous study. So if it is already adopted from previous study, it doesn't require pilot test. Why? If we conduct another pilot test, it means that we don't believe on the result of the questionnaire. And let's say if we use this adopted concept on result before you come up to the regressions analysis, you have to evaluate CMV. The CMV is common. CMV stands for common method variance. This common method variance can be used from through two ways: VIF, external, and Harman single factor, where when CMV has been exceeding 50%, more than 50%, it is stated the items of the questionnaire has been feasible and representative for your research. This is for adapted, but if it is modified or the one that we create, there are two validations. The first validation is from the expert. An expert is whether the context of your research is business, the content manager, and the second expert is the language expert. And we have to validate in terms of language and also context to the expert. And once we validate, we again test with a pilot study with a smaller sample size. And the sample size can be 10% of the target sample that we are going to use. For example, your sample target is 500. So if it is 500, it means you have to test to 50 respondents. Let's say there is other loading, conference reliability. If it is statistically okay, you can do it. And if you want to test, you can use the pilot study to collect the data. And after that, you should test the CMV. So you have to do it twice. If the CMV is fine, it means that there is no problem at all. So that's the answer. And why we should test the CMV? Why? Because we adopt what it is mentioned as self-reported scale or questionnaire. Self-reported questionnaire must be tested through CMV. It means that this is a validity instrument. How far the validity instrument that we are using, whether it is okay or not. So that's all, Paimno. Hope it is clear. Yes, understood. Well, Pak Ibnu Azhar, hope the answer responds to your questions. Let's go back to the room Q&A column. From Andy, how to deepen or how to sharpen the significance of the research in a paper. So we have three questions. Another question is from Eviati Juliana. The solutions of our research that we check in the ground, should we put the answer to the article or is just a confirmations for us? What if the answer doesn't confirm the result of our research? So let me respond the question from Eviati, Ibu Eviati Juliana. So I'm really happy when I'm criticized this way. So I have a chance to provide deeper argument. For example, Ibu Eviati, maybe you are from nursing background. From your research, it is stated that the quality of the hospital service from pragmatism paradigm that you have conducted, and the result shows that the empathy of the doctor, the empathy of the nurses, and also the empathy of the receptionist and also the ambulance officer in the hospital that you are researching are not significant, are not performed significantly in practical way. So that's the findings that you get. And then you develop a questionnaire for your research. And then this is the result of my research. So the strategy that I have to use based on my research from the item questionnaire that you have developed is by, let's say, by smiling to the patients. We should welcome the patient with positive words and then perform a very intense consultations. And the questionnaire is given to the doctors, to the nurses, and to the reception and for all the hospital's elements. And then you also share this to the patients in the hospital. So we do this kind of cross sections. So we use a cross sections answer. And then the answer from doctor said yes, because that's what we have done so far. We don't smile to the patient, and it will be good if we can apply this in this hospital. And let's say the patient said, yeah, the doctor is not right. He never smile. The doctors never smile. The result from these two surveys and the post-survey result, we should share in the research. That's what we call as the conclusions, implications, and the minus point of this research. Because one aspect of the failure in the research is the limitation, right? Limitation. What is limitations of this research? We don't know how far the applicability of our research, the solution, and we should measure the solution. If there is any problem, we should express in the limitation. So, a good research is a research that solved everything. No, but the good quality is the research that can identify the plus and also the minus point, the strength and also the weakness of the research. So hopefully, once you have occupied all the practical solutions, it will create, it will intricate people to read deeper. And then let's say from Pak Andi, how to deep dive the significance of the research in a paper. I think I have responded to this. I have explained about this. The first is insight recognitions, and then theoretical background or theoretical gap. And here is the practical problem. And here is formulating research questions. I want to remind you that research without a problem, without a gap, without a research question, it is rejected. So, to put it in a simple way, if you want to, let's say, you want to give a strong significance, a powerful significance, please identify the problem as I have explained in the beginning and find out the theoretical gap by creating tables and propose a research questions that provide a solutive answer. If you have created that way, Bu Novianti will not reject your paper because it's already significant. You get the gap and also will reject, let's say, in the International Scopus Index Journal, I have endorsed one paper to be directly published without review. Why? Because I've seen it's very perfect. So if you read a paper and you found out that it is submitted on 11th and published on 15th, it means that a publication based on endorsement. Why? Because it's very significant. And hopefully it has answered your questions. Another questions is, sometimes I will think about the pragmatical paradigm. I really hope that Bapak Agus is coming from social science, yeah? Or if it's not social science, it's fine. If you're not from social science, I suggest to use positivism in developing the research. Or not, it will be worse. But if it is used in applied science, it's also fine. How is the strategy? In practice,
So, who's actually the stakeholder that can be approached for the press survey? And then after that, secondary identifications data, the sensor development that has been done today and how is it looks like, what's the specifications, and so on and so forth. Because probably this is not my field, I'm not really able to provide a better answer. And then after that, once you look who are the stakeholders, you can do the pre-survey and then you can get the insight or the problems that happens in the sensor of the airplane industry. From there, you can look from the theory how the problem solving in the current sensor developments here. What's the theory? Probably by theory, they prove something on to what extent the sensor development has been done. And the keyword that you develop, you need to test this whether it can be confirmed or not. If not, and then you can propose the research questions to address these issues. And then after that, the research methodology, and it's done. I hope it can answer your questions. I think that's all. Thank you. All right, so I think we still have 10 minutes remaining. I'm going to read one more questions from Mr. Wu Andayani. The Honorable Dr. Andri, please give me a tips to do the research and development, specifically how to select the research methodology. Thank you. That's the questions from Miss Wu. Mr. Andri, over to you. All right, thank you very much. Like I mentioned earlier, the research methodology is a tools. Let's say that this is a research that we've developed with the pragmatics methodology that we have arranged earlier. And then from the conceptual framework that have been developed, usually it looks like this. I do really hope that Ibu Wu from the social science or others, if not, and I do hope that you can find the relevant if the conceptual frameworks looks like this, like A, B, C, D, and E, and then it is influence one another, positive, positive, negative, and so on and so forth. Now, there is a concept on how to choose the research methodology that is correct to test your research. But then the first thing that we do is that how we can have a right identifications. All of that started with what is the objective? What's the objective of your research, Ibuwu? If your objective, for example, is only for, okay, to identify the problems, and after that to explain the relationship with this with one variable and the other thing, it means that it's correlational. So you can use regressions. If you can use regressions, and then you can use the approach of SMARTS DLS or Smart PLS or SSM AMOS or by using the regressions through SPSS. Can be done, right? If the objective, let's say that like the previous one, Ibuwu, like I mentioned, the paradigm, pragmatist paradigm, ladies and gentlemen, usually is using a mixed method between qualitative and quantitative. It always makes. Why? Because you can imagine, so let's say that I want to know how effective the solutions that I provide here through the interview. The interview it alone, it's qualitative, right? And then after that, it can be measured. I will continue. Second thing, it can be measured from our research questions. To what extent our research questions, if our research questions, it's just only for the correlations, and then prove statistically, I hope I do really think that we need to do quantitative. But then again, if our research questions makes us to receive a solutive answer like what has been practiced earlier, it means that we can use mixed method. Or let's say, Ibuwowo, your research using a systematic literature review. It means that we can use the meta-analysis or using the content analysis or systematic review. And of course, it's quantitative and qualitative, right? It is now left to you. What is the objective of your research and to what extent your research makes you to quantified or qualified? I hope it can answer your questions. I think that's all, Mr. Juardi. I hope it can clear some confusions. Okay, we still have 5 minutes. Dr. Andrea, you still have a willingness to answer the questions? Probably, yeah, I'm just going to censor the similar questions. And this is a questions from Mr. Dagdo. He said, "Hello, Mr. Andri. Have you ever analyzed the compositions of paradigm that accepted a lot, like positivism, constructivism, pragmatism, or subjectivism?" Mr. Andri, over to you. Okay, thank you very much. Wow. Mr. Degdo, I hope you're coming from the philosopher background, but then, yeah, it's no problem actually. In the philosophy, it's okay for us to know what we call the ontology, epistemology, and then, right? And the other one, what we call axiology. In essence, we can understand that when the branch of this philosophy understood by those who have the understanding of positivism, it means that we refer to the reality, factual reality or empirical reality that can be drafted from the existed objectivity theory, problem, and solutions, right, ladies and gentlemen? But then, by positivism, three branch of this philosophy, all done by something that we called current belief, current belief, or current theory, or current evidence. So that's why ontology from aspect positivisms, you can pay attention to the compositions based to the previous research or based on the gap that has been found or based on the epistemology that has been done. But then you need to refer to that, meaning the fact saying, what are you going to do? That on epistemology, entomology, and others. So, subjectivism, we view this, the object on human, consider that epistemology, ontology, and others. And then after that, for example, how subjectivisms viewed ontology, the study of being, why we have LGBT today. The answer of subjectivisms, it's like, yeah, that is the need because the people need an accelerations because it's very easy to use. That's the study of being. And then the epistemology said that oh, from the chat, how the chat GPT coming from? Oh, yes, of course, there's the humans and technology. Oh, the AI has been developed for a long time. But then why today it's these things familiar for us? Oh, let's say that you can use this in practice. But then, Mr. Degdo, the difference is that how to find the current AI and then how the AI in the future. That's what we need to criticize, not only based on the previous theory that we developed, but then from the user or the practice or the theory. We need to evaluate as a whole and then we look at the pragmatisms, whether it is specific or general problems that we need to solve. If it is the problem of constructivisms, probably it's going to take a long time to explain. But then those are the essence. We don't want to stuck or to, we need the proof. We need to evaluate. We shouldn't refer to the current belief. And in other side, positivisms also said you can taste this later, the attendees or whoever in this room. Of course, there's going to be one person that might say, that's the theory saying this. Yeah, probably they have the positivism. But is there any other people say that it's not possible because based on practice, it's not exist? It means that they are pragmatisms. So if someone said that, yes, it's good in my opinion because this is very useful and with the developments of humans, the AI has been developed. And if they think it's good for them, it means that it's positivism. It's very easy to see this. But then the compositions from ontology, axiology, epistemology, it is considered from the practical and problem solving. I think that's all, Mr. Regdo, my answer. I think that's all. I hope it can clear out some confusions. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Andre, PhD, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who already asked many questions and feels like we still need a lot of questions that needs to be answered that can be answered by Mr. Andre, but then limitations of time that makes us needs to stop. And again, let's give round of applause for Mr. Andre, who has been very amazing, and then for those of you who have been asking a very wonderful questions. I think that's all, and that's the end of our materials for today that has been conveyed by a very amazing expert, Mr. Andre. And me, myself, as Juardi, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to give the floor back to the MC. Miss Putri, time is yours. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Andre, for your valuable presentations. And thank you, Mr. Juardi, for moderating this event. Now, I would like to call upon the main directors of IDC Pop to hand over the certificate virtually to our speaker and our moderator. All right. Thank you very much, Mbak Putri. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank God this is the end of our online sessions. I would like to say thank you very much and highest appreciations to Mr. Andri Dayarana Lalahi. Thank you very much, Prof, for sharing your knowledge and as well as your valuable experience to all of the participants and as well as to our moderator, Ms. Dr. Juardi MM, who has been facilitating this discussion successfully. Again, thank you very much for an amazing contributions. This is the certificate. Ladies and gentlemen, please turn on your camera. Let's start from the first slide. We're still waiting for other participants to turn on your camera. Please turn on your camera, ladies and gentlemen. Let's start. One, two, three. Slide two. One, two, three. Let's go to the slide number three. One, two, three. Slide number four. One, two, and three. Let's go to the last slide, ladies and gentlemen. One, two, three. Thank you very much for your kind participations and your kind attentions, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very amazing event, and we do really hope that you can get a very available insight. Before we end this formally, we would like to remind you about one opportunities that we'd like to offer you. If you're a researcher or author or academicians who wants to publish the result of your research in the Sinta index. We and IDC Pub have the solutions for you. Please visit our website to check many of your journal. We're ready to facilitate you in the process of publishing your scientific articles, and to make sure to be well distributed your scientific research. Not only you are going to contribute, but then to provide a benefit from your research. Again, thank you very much for your kind participation, ladies and gentlemen. And we will happy and waiting for collaborate with you and your future publications on scientific research. See you and happy contributing to scientific world. I am Putri Ayu Lestari signing off. Thank you.